Boy howdy, we are back, and today I am talking about how you can make your very first Warcry Warband.
War Games on Toast.
You what? Welcome to War Games on Toast, all of you lovely people. It's me. It's Toast. How are you this wonderful Wednesday? The last couple of weeks have been a little bit hardcore, at least for my standards, so today I thought I would take a step back and take things a little bit smoother, a little bit simpler, and do a video recommended or requested by one of my patrons, Bigfoot's brother. He reached out and asked me to make a video on how to make your very first warband, because the process isn't exactly straightforward. Naturally, this video is more for beginner players, but there is some information here that I hope will benefit some more experienced players when it comes to building their lists. So buckle up and let's get on with the video.
Groovy.
Oh no, I tell a lie, it is time to do a little bit of shilling. Please remember to hit that like button, comment and subscribe, as that helps me fight against that dastardly YouTube algorithmic demon. And if you want to help in a more tangible way, then please consider signing up to my Patreon and my YouTube members, like all of these wonderful people on screen now. Badoosh. But with all of that out of the way, let's really get on with the show.
And now for something completely different.
Like I've been trying to do more of, this is going to be mostly FaceCam, although I will cut away when required to show the appropriate information. When you first start building your lists for Warcry, you have to factor in your Grand Alliance. There are a total of 4 Grand Alliances consisting of Order, Death, Destruction and Chaos. Within each Grand Alliance, you will find a myriad of factions that will make up the basis of your warband. When starting your list, you'll have the choice of picking between a one-box or a bespoke warband that is exclusive to Warcry, such as the Claws of Karanak, or the Hunters of Huanshi, or the Compendium, which consists of things like Stormcast or Ironjaws. Basically, it's fancy names, fancy boxing and fancy artwork versus Age of Sigmar stuff. At the bare minimum, your warband will consist of one hero who will be your leader. Then you must hit the minimum unit requirement, which is 3, which means you need to take 2 more models. It's important to note the model cap, which is 15, and the hero cap, which is 3. Yes, this does mean you can take 3 heroes and literally nothing else, and that would be a legal warband. It will be very hard to win with though. Despite the model cap being 15, you will very rarely get there, as very few warbands can effectively hit that number, and instead you will likely see your warbands fall between around about 7 to around about 9. That is where most warbands will exist within, and as a general rule of thumb, that should be where you're aiming unless you're running a very horde-centric warband or a hyper-elite warband. For example, the Black Talons for Elite or the Royal Beast Flayers for Horde. Finally, there is a points cost that goes with every single unit, and naturally there is a cap on how many points you can take in a single warband. Now typically most games of Warcry are built around 1000 points, but different formats could have more or less. For example, narrative. Always be sure to check with your opponents or your local club to see what points level you are playing at, and then build your list accordingly. When building your list, you can't take models that do not share your faction's rune mark. So for example, Thunderstrike Stormcast, despite being Stormcast and despite being Order, can't take a basic mook from the Sacrosanct Chamber or the Vanguard Chamber or anything that isn't Thunderstrike Stormcast.
You're a liar! You're a liar! You know something that you're not telling us, you slimy scumbag liar!
But that's not entirely true, because allies exist, and the ally system in Warcry is rather wonderful. Ally cap, like everything else, you can only take 2 allies in Warcry, and allies are their own unique thing, kind of. Some factions have their own dedicated unique allies. For example, Chaos have access to the Ogred Myrmidon and the Fomred Crusher, to name a few. These are dedicated allies, and you can take them in any Chaos warband. Allies can also take the form of heroes, and this is where the system gets split wide open. So any hero from any warband can be taken in your warband, provided that they are part of the same Grand Alliance. So again, order, death, destruction, or chaos. It's very important to remember that these heroic allies do count towards both your ally cap of 2 and your hero cap of 3. Not only that, they do not count towards your 1 minimum hero slot for your leader. You must take a hero from your warband. Naturally, heroic allies and allies in general are ridiculously powerful and add all kinds of flavour to your list building process because they bring everything they can do in their base warband into your warband. For example, if you took a Lord Imperator into any of your order warbands, you would gain all of his wonderful abilities as well as his amazing stats. But basic allies are not the only form of ally in Warcry, because there are also Bladeborne allies, and these are much more complex. So basically, Bladeborne warbands are warbands from Warhammer Underworlds. That's the other kind of skirmishy board game that Games Workshop do. Bladeborne allies are kind of wild because they exist within compendium factions almost exclusively. These nearly all consist of one hero and a bunch of regular fighters. Now the basic rules for allies still applies here. For example, if you wanted to take Jags the Bleeder into your Destruction Gloomspite Gits list, you couldn't because he does not have the heroic rune mark. This is where the exception comes in, or at least one of the exceptions. As long as you take the hero from a Bladeborne warband, you can take the rest of that hero's Bladeborne warband without any of those additional models counting towards your ally cap. That's right, Bladeborne do count towards your ally cap, but only the hero. To go back to our example, if our Gloomspite Gits player wanted to take Jags the Bleeder into his list, he would first have to take Daggok, because Daggok is the leader of that Bladeborne warband. I vaguely hinted at a second exception, and this is because there is one. If your Bladeborne warband has the same faction rune mark as the faction you are playing, everything changes. Firstly, the leader of that warband does not count as an ally at all. So you can take him, and not only that, you can take him as your one required hero leader. And on top of that, you don't need to take him at all to access his warband. Let's take that Jags the Bleeder example one more time. If you wanted to take Jags the Bleeder and you are running Cruel Boys as your warband, you could take Jags the Bleeder as a regular guy and never have to take his leader, Daggok. And again, he would not count towards your ally count. He would just be a regular guy in your warband. Finally, unless stated somewhere within the profile, Bladeborne are unique. You can only ever have one of every model there. Again, unless it specifically specifies. As a final aside, this is all to do with rune marks and not to do with names. For example, let's take Jags the Bleeder again. You would still have to take Daggok if you are running the unique Warcry Warband, the Cruel Boys Monster Killers, because the Cruel Boys Monster Killers, despite having Cruel Boys in their name, do not have the Cruel Boys rune mark. Is all of that kind of complicated? Yes, Bladeborne are one of the most complicated aspects of the Warcry list building process, and it's something you will likely have to get used to if you want to make more competitive lists, because Bladeborne are really good. Not all of them, mind you, but a fair few are pretty darn good. Finally, Bladeborne do have access to their own unique abilities. However, they also have access to all of the abilities and reactions of their base warband, provided they have all of the rune marks associated with that ability. So surely that is it. We have all of our allies, all of our heroes, all of our units, our points limit, and our Bladeborne. Surely there is nothing left to go through. Well, there are a few things we still have to go through, and one of those things are thralls. Thralls are basically like allies, but they don't take up your ally slots at all, and in fact have their own unique slot called the Thrall slot, of which you can take 3. Nearly every Grand Alliance has access to Thralls in one way or another, with the big exception being Order, who have none. Thralls add a variety of units to your warband that may be missing from your warband at a base. For example, Chaos have access to Chaos Hounds and Chaos Spawn, Chaos Hounds being very fast and Chaos Spawn being very durable. These are 2 things that can really help clog up your list. As long as you don't go over 3 Thralls, you are good to go. Do remember that Thralls do not share your warband rune mark and therefore have no access to any of your warband's abilities, but instead have access to their own unique selection of abilities which can be found within the compendium. With Thralls done, are we done? No, we still have one last section, and that is for monsters. A big disclaimer for monsters: not everyone likes playing against them, and many formats just don't allow them. For example, match play, tournament play, the organisers may just say you can't use them. Because of this, it's very important to check with your opponent first if they are okay with using monsters, even though they are legally allowed to be used in any format. Monsters are huge, hulking beasts that have pages of rules dedicated to just them. I am not going to go into all of their rules because that would take up an entire video in and of itself, because monsters are fairly complicated compared to your regular guys. They change the game in many, many ways. They are huge, hulking brutes that cost an arm and a leg. We are talking 450 points at a bare minimum, often going over 500 points. These have the highest wound totals, the highest damage output, and ridiculous stats across the board, and have their own unique abilities, as well as their own generic abilities, because they can't use the basic things like Onslaught or Rush or Rampage. Because of their ludicrous cost and because of the rules, you can only take one monster in any given warband. Like with Allies and Bladeborne and Thralls, each Grand Alliance has its own selection of monsters, and providing you are playing that Grand Alliance, you have access to those monsters within your list building. For example, if I was running Destruction, I could bring an Ale Guzzler Gargant, or an Arachnarok Spider, or a Dankhold Troggoth. As a final note, do bear in mind that certain monsters have ginormous bases and ginormous model sizes. It is almost impossible to move a zombie dragon around the board, and this can lead to you not being able to play with your incredibly expensive model because Warcry boards tend to be very dense with terrain. If you want to take one, stigma and difficulties be damned, knock yourself out. They are a lot of fun in the right context. And those are the basics to building your first ever Warcry warband. But let's have some basic tips on how to make a good warband before we sign off. First things first, you don't actually have to build your own warband right from the start. You can just take a one-box warband, for example, Closer Karanak or Hunters for Wanshi again, and you would have an entire warband that reaches 1000 points or more or less that in one box, and you can run that and have a good time. What's more, many of the recent warbands within the one box sort of section of Warcry actually work very well. A big shout out to Vulcan Flameseekers, Monster Killers, and even the Gorge Amor pack, who all bring excellent one-box starting points. If you are planning on building your own warband from scratch, however, I wholeheartedly recommend you aim for a warband size between the sizes of 7 and 9. If you're running something hyper elite like Black Talons or something Stormcasty, you are likely going to lock yourself out to a 6-man warband, so bear that in mind. When building your first warband, and when I build any of my warbands, I try to fill these criteria the best I can. I like having something that can kill, something that can get in there, do the damage, kill the things that need to die, and do it effectively enough to do it usually in one swing. On top of that, I also like to bring something that can disrupt, something that can mess with my opponent so my killy thing doesn't have to. This could be a net, this could be a pull, this could be a displacement effect. This could just be a debuff in general that reduces enemy stats. I also like having something that is fast or something that can project threats, or both at the same time. For example, something with a big gun who can shoot from far away, or something that has a movement ability that allows it to get into combat very quickly, very effectively, to deal with things and reach out and pressure my opponents when I want to and when I need to. And finally, I like having something durable, or if I can't have that, something that I can take en masse. This allows the warband to basically stick around, take a hit and not be impacted too much, whilst the other parts of my warband do the work that needs to be done. Of course, you could double or even triple down on any of these aspects and still make a powerful list. Some people bring purely aggressive lists that are just filled to the brim with murder, and they work. But for me, I like something a little bit more balanced, a little bit more all-comer, so I can deal with any threat, any opponent, and any mission in any pack. The biggest takeaway here, though, is have fun and experiment. Of course, net listing is always an option, and it is absolutely fine and accepted within Warcry. People of all skill levels go online and just take the best lists that are performing right now, and that is absolutely okay to do. But that being said, there is value in making something that is distinctly yours. Self-expression within gameplay and within list building is something I will always and forever encourage. And this does apply to net listing, as you can take that as a jumping off block to iterate and make something entirely new using the bones and the foundations of something you've seen somewhere else.
Spies. He knows about the spies.
Hey, it's Future Toast here. I forgot one little thing, and that is divine blessings. Each fighter in your warbands can take one divine blessing, with each divine blessing having a different cost based on the blessing itself and how many wounds that fighter has. Divine blessings are a fantastic way to add a few extra points to your warband if you are not quite hitting 1000 points, and it's also a fantastic way to tweak your list to work just the way you want. As a final aside, I wholeheartedly recommend using warcrier.net to build your list and to theorycraft, as it has every single fighter, every single stat and every single rule you would ever possibly want. And that is it for this video. With any luck, if you're a new player, you now know how to build your very first warband and how to go about it. If there's anything I've missed or anything you want to know or want clarified, please feel free to drop it in the comments below. And if you have something else that is niggling on your mind that you want answered, be sure to holler that into the comments as well, and I will give it a gander and make a video on that in the future as well. Although when that'll be, I don't know. In the meantime, remember to hit that like button and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video. Ta-ra! Boy howdy, we've made it to the post-toast credits, so a massive shout out to my algorithmic demon slayers: Armor Enthusiast 7, Brioche, CT6497, Girth Demon, Head Knight of Paint, Heinz D, Long Run Hobbies, Lord Phylax, Sable Saber, Sam, Steve Bean, Tough Tootin' Baby, and Velas. Until next time, you wonderful people, ta-ra.
That was beautiful.